Top Gear this week, will classic car values keep on going through the roof? Two new family cars from Daihatsu, Subaru, and a young Scot who hopes to join the great names of Formula One.
Hello and welcome to this week's Top Gear at the NEC in Birmingham, the International Classic and Sports Car Show. They've got £70 million worth of vehicles on display here, from all shapes and sizes, from Mini Coopers to Blur Bentleys, and from all over, America, Italy, France and Germany, as well as the UK. The insurance costs alone for this little lot must have caused a tremor or two in the city. But what you might ask, is a classic car? Well, who knows? Ask it as an expert, you get a dozen different answers. Seems to be any vehicle you can attach some historic or emotional value to, either because of the person who drove it or because of the quality of its design and engineering. The single common factor seems to be they're all pretty pricey these days. But let's start this evening with a glimpse of some of the glamorous curves on display here.
You make me feel so young. You make me feel so spring has sprung. And every time I see you grin, I'm such a happy individual. The moment that you speak, I wanna go play hide and seek. I wanna go and bounce the moon just like a toy balloon.
There are some truly spectacular pieces on the American stand, all from California, the Sunshine State, which has had a constant love affair with the car ever since it first rolled over the horizon. This is the marvellous Stutz Bearcat from 1913. It gained its reputation with the fact that the very first car that Harry Stutz built in 1911, a sports car indeed, came 11th in that year's Indianapolis Grand Prix. He immediately put the car into production, and because of its rugged good looks, its complete absence of bodywork, not to mention the dramatic performance from the hefty 6.4-litre engine, immediately became all the rage. The car for young bloods and flappers to be seen around in, a sort of symbol, if you like, of the jazz age. Meanwhile, in Hollywood in the 30s, despite the Depression, cars for the stars became bigger, brasher and more exotic than ever before. They don't come more exotic than this huge red and yellow Duesenberg, owned by Clark Gable himself, utterly outrageous in every way, from the long, long lemon bonnet to the quartet of chromed exhaust pipes and the double spare on the back, no, that in case Clark wished to change a wheel if he got a puncture. It's claimed to be the car in which Clark Gable wooed and won the sultry Carole Lombard, and of course he wasn't alone in owning a doozy, as they were called. Gary Cooper had one, so too did Greta Garbo and James Cagney and Mae West. Can you imagine a traffic jam of these cruising along Sunset Boulevard? The Italian cars at the show are grouped around the theme of the famous Mille Miglia. The grueling 1,000-mile road race around Italy was brought to a halt in 1957. All the famous marques took part, of course: Ferrari, Maserati, Jaguar and the rest. This great classic sports car race was particularly associated with the Alfa Romeo name, partly because they won it 11 times, and also because in 1934, with this car, the Alfa Monza, they scored a marvellous 1-2-3 victory. Immensely powerful with the straight 8 supercharged engine. It was also very successful on the racetrack. In fact, it won Monza in 1931, which is where it got its name from. Driven by all the great drivers, Nuvolari, Campari and the rest, it is perhaps the greatest pre-war Alfa Romeo of them all. This is the glorious SSK, produced by Mercedes in the mid-20s. These big, powerful, heavy machines, weighing well over 2 tons and with huge Porsche-designed 7-litre engines, took the sporting world by storm, carried Mercedes to their first Mille Miglia win in 1931. And that brings us to the French connection. I'm sitting in about £1 million worth of very, very stylish Talbot Darracq, built by the French Talbot company, not the English one. In fact, this car was designed by 2 Paris-based stylists called Figioni and Flashy, sometimes known in the UK as Phony and Flashy. Well, flashy maybe, but phony it certainly wasn't. With its 4-litre engine and its superb aerodynamics, just look at those front wings, it could easily clear the 100-mile-an-hour mark. It even had recessed aerodynamic door handles. Did quite well in sports car racing in its day, and the same chassis with a bigger engine, 4.5 litres, became the Talbot Grand Prix car. But certainly, with its superb detailing, it's got to be one of the most beautiful 2-seaters ever produced. But how's this for a real flight of fancy? It was designed by Bertoni for Alfa Romeo in in the mid-50s. It's called the Bat 7, nothing at all to do with Batman and Robin, despite its appearance. BAT stands for Berlinetta Aerodinamica Technica, which means it was designed to explore the mysteries of streamlining, as they called it then. Nowadays we call it aerodynamics. The man who worked on it was from the aircraft industry, and you can see the clear influence of fighter aircraft and those spiky curved wings and the rounded bullet nose. He even streamlined the interior. There's on a straight line in sight. And I bet if you put this concept car on a motor show stand now and called it a car for the 90s, you'd just about get away with it. Now, this is the car that never was. It was given the code name Lynx as a prototype. That's LYNX, of course, so it's sometimes called the missing links of the TR7 range. You can see the clear TR7 likeness at the front end.
It's the back end that's different, a somewhat ungainly coupe design. It was going to be the top of the TR7 range, but it was axed in the final development stage. Its claim to fame is that it's the only prototype that remains. And let's finish with what for many is the archetypal vintage car, the big, blown or supercharged Bentley thundering along in British racing green. First produced by W.O. Bentley in 1919 and reaching their peak with their famous 1-2-3-4 victory at Le Mans in 1929. This is the 4.5-litre version, built, as so many of them are, from a crate load of bits.
As you walk around this show, you can't help but be struck by a marked change in atmosphere, all summed up, I suppose, in the one word, money. It used to be filled to the rafters with enthusiasts, only concerned to polish the paintwork and highlight the chrome. Now you're knee-deep in dealers, offering cars for sale at prices that have more digits than a chassis number. Cars, it seems, have replaced art as the main bolt hole for investors, and everyone's concerned whether or not the balloon will burst. Sue Baker's been examining the trends.
The oldest cars in existence, the sort you can use to take part in the Brighton Run, have a value which is easy to understand. The sheer age and very small numbers see to that. But it's not just the Genevieve generation that are now collectible. Even cars from as recently as the 1970s are now sought after. And increasingly classic cars have been fetching astounding prices. This was the car that set the pace, the Bugatti Royale that sold for £5.5 million in 1987, and a fortnight ago for almost double that. Cars now seem to change hands for millions almost weekly, and the auction business has expanded to match, with as many as 15 international auctions each month. The fever soon spread to small country auctions as well. The prices of many 50s and 60s cars, particularly British sports cars, increased quickly as they became fashionable. An Austin Healey 3000 Mark III in top condition would have been £9,000 5 years ago, but it had risen to £35,000 by last autumn. An unremarkable Aston Martin, the DB6 Mark I, rose from £6,000 to £85,000 in the same period. Since then, the values of both cars have dropped considerably, particularly the Aston Martin. Reaction to the market hype, the general economic environment, and an influx of cars brought over from America to cope with the demand have all made people question last year's high price levels.
The growth in prices for cars during that period was so enormous that it peaked very quickly, and now we have the stage where cars like Aston Martins and E-Type Jaguars are completely static in price because there's a huge influx on the market. There's now not enough buyers for the many cars that are available, so prices are staying completely level, and there is a great tailing off of heavy investment in old cars.
To match the prices being paid, there's a whole new industry in restoring and dealing in classic cars. It's now big business. Gone are the days when most treasured classics were done up in their owners' own backyards, and the buyers are changing too.
Originally we had all the enthusiasts, the VSCC members, the Prescott members, all the people who took the cars to Silverstone the weekend. They were the buyers of cars, and in the last few years we've had the investor come in who wants to buy a car, not necessarily to drive it and use it, but for the pure investment side.
Modified dashboards and gear levers, new wheels and improved handling may all be specified, but there's always a compromise between making improvements and keeping the car original. It can affect a value either way. Historically important cars are always more valuable. The The fact that this TR3 was built for the stand at the 1956 Motor Show, that it was the autocar and motor road test car, and that it competed in the 1958 Monte Carlo Rally makes it worth over twice as much as an ordinary TR3. To compete in historic car rallies, some collectors even convert old cars to competition specifications, like this Mark II Ford Zephyr. Its owner has mixed feelings about the current preoccupation with the financial side of classic cars.
Really, to an enthusiast, this is sort of background drivel, isn't it? You know, you don't really think about the car that way. The value only comes into it when it becomes too expensive for you to go and buy one, and then it's extremely annoying. Finding old cars like this, restoring them, saving something for posterity is really part of what the enthusiast's on about. The other thing, of course, is getting in and driving the car. If you're just going to save it as a pure investment, you might as well create that shape out of a block of wood and just leave it there to look at.
It's really very sad that so many beautiful old cars like this 1930s Zagato-bodied Alfa Romeo are getting so far beyond the reach of most of the true enthusiasts. Well, how many enthusiasts do you know who could afford £400,000? Well, now more and more makes of old car are becoming increasingly valuable. So, what are the collectible thoroughbreds of tomorrow?
Well, I certainly think that in the sub-12, £10,000 bracket, there's an awful lot of choice still for either the investor or the enthusiast. Certainly anything convertible, 70s sports saloons, and practical, good-looking cars are all, you know, they're all to be found in that level.
One 70s saloon going up in value is the Triumph Dolomite Sprint. Its 16-valve, 2-litre engine gives it a performance that belies its staid appearance. A pristine example like this can be yours for around £5,000, a tatty example quite a bit less. Volvo's P1800 is stylish as well as reliable. So many classics weren't reliable when they were new, let alone now, so expect the values of dependable cars to increase. A good condition Volvo like this still costs less than £6,000. One unusual tip is the Vanden Plas 1300. The Japanese apparently can't resist the quaint looks and the old world interior, and they'll pay up to £10,000 for their slice of English heritage. For serious money, though, the experts are still backing the sports cars.
I think the 50s British sports cars are without doubt marvellous cars. I mean, we made the greatest cars in the world at that time. I think that as cars get higher and higher in value, obviously the lesser car is going to become within the field of other people. But I mean, I still think that the Jaguar market and the Austin Healey market is a market which will continue to go on. They made very, very few of these cars.
And even fewer Ferraris. This 315S is one of two of the marque to be auctioned in Monaco later this month, each expected to fetch prices of over £8 million, despite a recent drop-off in Ferrari values. The fall-off is probably only temporary. With cars, as with fine art and fine houses, quality and rarity generally pay off in the end.